The Suzanne Hart incident. On December 14, 2011, 41-year-old Suzanne Hart arrived at work on Madison Avenue in Manhattan. She was the director of Y&R advertising and had started her day like any other, stepping into the office lobby to take the elevator up. The building was busy with workers coming and going. In the lobby, the elevators were lined up in a row of doors, opening and closing constantly as people hurried inside. Just after 10 a.m., Hart walked toward one of the cars. She stepped forward into the doorway, her hand clutching a paper cup of coffee. At the exact moment she moved inside, something went wrong. The elevator suddenly lurched upward with its doors still open. Hart was halfway in when the malfunction struck. The cab shot up before she could fully enter. Her body was caught between the rising floor of the elevator and the doorframe of the lobby. Witnesses described the sound of metal grinding and a scream that echoed through the lobby. Workers nearby froze in shock as the elevator dragged her upward, her body pinned. It rose several floors before stopping. By then, Hart had been crushed. The entire building was evacuated. Police and firefighters arrived quickly, but it was already too late. Inside the shaft, Hart's body remained trapped, pinned between the cab and the door frame. Crews worked for an hour to extract her remains. Later investigations revealed the elevator company had been working on that exact car earlier in the morning. Proper safety procedures were ignored. The workers had bypassed a safety circuit designed to prevent the car from moving with its doors open. The bypass was never removed. Hart stepped inside at the worst possible moment. Her death became one of the most infamous elevator accidents in New York history. In a city filled with high-rises, the idea of being crushed by the very machine meant to carry people safely to work became a nightmare made real. The Houston decapitation on August 2003 in a humid summer morning in Houston, Texas. 40-year-old Jose Morales was working as an elevator mechanic inside a mid-rise office building. He had been in the trade for years, skilled at repairing lifts and shafts. That morning, the building was quiet. Most tenants had not yet arrived. Morales was alone inside the elevator shaft, standing on top of one of the cabs as he carried out maintenance. The shaft was narrow, lined with steel rails and cables. The sound of his tools echoed faintly. He had no reason to think the machinery would suddenly engage. But at some point during his work, a second mechanic mistakenly energized the system. The elevator above Morales began to descend. In seconds, the massive steel cab dropped down the shaft directly toward him. Morales didn't have time to escape. The car struck him with enormous force. Witnesses later said the impact was so violent it decapitated him instantly. His body fell onto the top of the lower cab. His head was found crushed between the two elevators. Co-workers rushed to the scene but were powerless. Emergency services arrived to find a scene too gruesome to describe. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration investigated. They found multiple violations in lockout procedures. The most basic rule of elevator repair had been ignored. The power source was never properly secured. A simple safeguard could have saved his life. Morales left behind a wife and 2 children. His death became a haunting reminder of the dangers faced by elevator workers, men and women who step into the most confined and deadly spaces of a building. The Brazilian freefall. In July 2014, 2 siblings in Recife, Brazil, entered their apartment building's elevator. They were on the 20th floor and pressed the button to go down. The doors closed. The car jolted. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the elevator suddenly plummeted. Witnesses outside the shaft later described hearing the sound of cables snapping, followed by the roar of a free-falling car. Inside, the siblings screamed as the elevator dropped 30 stories at incredible speed. When it slammed into the bottom of the shaft, the impact was catastrophic. Rescue teams rushed in. One sibling was killed instantly. The other was critically injured, trapped inside the twisted metal. The accident horrified residents. Elevators were supposed to have multiple fail-safes, emergency brakes, redundant cables, shock absorbers. But investigators found the system had not been inspected in years. Worn cables, neglected brakes, and ignored warnings had all lined up to produce disaster. The tragedy shocked Brazil. For months afterward, residents across the country spoke of their fear of elevators. Newspapers printed diagrams of how elevators could fail and why poor maintenance had deadly consequences. The Elisa Lamb case. On January 31, 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lamb vanished inside the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. The last known footage of her came from the hotel's elevator security camera. The grainy black and white video showed her stepping inside, pressing multiple buttons and then behaving strangely. She peeked into the hallway, moved her arms in odd gestures, then hid in the corner of the cab. The doors never closed. At one point, she stepped out, then back in, then out again, as if avoiding something unseen. Days later, her body was found floating in the hotel's rooftop water tank. Technically, Lamb's death was not caused by an elevator malfunction, but the footage burned itself into public memory as one of the most disturbing elevator videos ever recorded. Viewers obsessed over her behavior. Was she hiding from someone? Experiencing a mental breakdown? Under the influence? The unanswered questions made the elevator clip legendary. For many, the unsettling footage turned the ordinary act of riding an elevator into something sinister. The Cecil Hotel later became infamous, its halls associated with death and mystery. The Beijing Mall accident on August 2019. In a busy shopping mall in Beijing, surveillance cameras captured a horrifying scene. A man stepped into the elevator unaware that the floor alignment was wrong. The cab was not flush with the lobby. It had stopped several inches higher. As he moved forward, he stumbled. At that exact moment, the elevator jerked upward. His torso entered the car, but his legs remained outside. The doors closed and the cab began to rise, trapping him halfway. Onlookers screamed and tried to stop the elevator, but the car continued upward, dragging his body until he was fatally crushed. The footage went viral across Chinese social media. Millions watched as the incident replayed, frame by frame, a reminder of how fragile life could be inside machinery trusted every day. Investigators blamed poor maintenance. The elevator had been flagged for misalignment issues before, but no repairs were carried out. The William Bill Gibbs case. In November 2003, 44-year-old William Gibbs was leaving work at a hospital in Atlanta. He stepped into an elevator to head down to the parking garage. The doors opened, but the cab had not arrived. Gibbs didn't notice. He walked forward into an empty shaft. He fell multiple stories before crashing into the bottom. Co-workers found him minutes later. He had been killed instantly. The tragedy was ruled the result of electrical failure. The indicator light had signaled the cab was there, but the system malfunctioned. Hospitals are places of safety, yet in this case, the very infrastructure became a death trap.